Due to participating in a strange forum voting, Yuan unexpectedly traveled to the world of Douluo continent. Most importantly, the neighboring village was the famous Holy Soul village, where there was also Tang San who said, "I see you have a way to take death." Fortunately, during the martial soul awakening ceremony, he loaded the League of Legends skin voice pack. Odyssey Kaiyin, Dragon Lord Li Qing, and Night Messenger also, as long as they recite the exclusive lines of these skins, he can use the corresponding martial souls of the skins. Millions of heroes, all listen to my orders. Witness the rolling of the giant wheel. The pinnacle of impure creation. My thunder fist will knock down all the evil spirits. Blaze beyond the surface, death within its embrace. From then on, Yuan was both chosen by heaven and the only one. Previously, the main focus was on the skin of Odyssey Kaiyin, who did not apprentice, did not follow Tang San, and did not enter the martial soul hall. The goal was to unify the continent and establish the protagonist's empire. Keywords of the novel. Douluo. I have loaded the Odyssey Kaiyin voice package without a pop-up window. Douluo. I have loaded the complete set of the Odyssey Kaiyin voice package TXT for download. Douluo. I have loaded the latest chapter of the Odyssey Kaiyin voice package to read. Chapter 1. Unsystematic Traverse wants to traverse home. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Unsystematic Traverse wants to traverse home, dismantling and dismantling. Wave by wave. Yuan looked excitedly at the screen in front of him, operating the sickle of the hero Shadow Flow, Kaiyin, to dismantle the opponent's base with each blow. His Kaiyin still used the skin of the Odyssey, and the blood-colored last stole the tower while constantly muttering, "So much delicious pain is about to come, the thought of this. I tremble with excitement." Next to the hero operated by Yuan, there was also a teammate operating the ocean disaster plank, stabbing the opponent's exposed base one by one. With the efforts of both of them, the health of the base gradually bottomed out. At this moment, all the people who had been implicated by the other party to Yuan ran back, but unfortunately, they came back too late. Just as Yuan cheered excitedly, the opponent's base exploded into a ball of fireworks. Woohoo! We are champions! Yuan couldn't help but shout out joy. After the game, his Kaiyin record was 14.5.7, deserving of being the MVP of this game, while the opponent's suspected junior player, the Little Fish Man, had a record of 24.3.2, earning him the title of SVP. Presumably, the other party's Xiao Dai is in considerable pain now. At the thought of this, Yuan trembles with joy, and this feeling is quite satisfying. It's great. This can also be flipped. Yuan completed a game of stealing and flipping, feeling much more comfortable, and also gave a thumbs up to all his teammates. And if he wins this one, he's just one more move away from advancing to the diamond rank. After playing in the Alliance for so many years, he is just one step away from the diamond. He casually clicked on the start of the next game, and while waiting, he opened a sports app game forum on his phone and casually looked at any interesting posts. Participating in voting. Which skin of League of Legends T2 do you think has the best design dialogue? Yuan read a voting post and said, "The skins of League of Legends are divided into levels. T1 level skins are either limited or ultimate skins, while T2 level skins modify the actions of hero characters and have independent and brand new dialogue voice." Of course that's the line from Kaiyin Odyssey's skin. "It's not worth mentioning," Yuan said disdainfully. "Millions of heroes, all listen to my orders. Your Majesty Kaiyin, the King of Kings. Great decree, enlighten the stars. They will sing my name for thousands of years. Witness the rolling of the giant wheel. The pinnacle of impure creation." A passionate and neutral line was spoken. As a skilled Kaiyin, Yuan's favorite skin is the Odyssey. Not only is his skin handsome, but his lines are also quite cool. Even with such a thought, he feels excited. He immediately clicked on Odyssey Kaiyin's option and then planned to vote. Result, you have to choose 3 to vote. Lu Yuan thought for a moment and then found a divine dragon venerable named Li Qing in the options. He is a skilled player in wilderness combat. Apart from Kaiyin, the most popular player is the blind monk Li Qing, and he also likes the skin of the divine dragon venerable. Is there another one? Lu Yuan slid down the options and was not very satisfied, mainly because he didn't have much impression of the other T2 skins in this vote. Then he finally saw a familiar name, Night Messenger Aso. Yasuo's Night Messenger is also good, forget it and choose this one. Lu Yuan clicked on the vote to see the current voting situation. Then, by the way, he wanted to pick up the water on the table, but without looking at it, he accidentally knocked over the water glass. Ah! Lu Yuan was frantically trying to intercept the water flow. The water flowed down the legs of the table and directly onto the computer host, followed by a rapid surge of intense electric current. At the next moment, a violent explosion lit up in front of Lu Yuan. At the last moment, his consciousness suddenly rose. Shit, this explosive power, you say this is a computer. This is a bomb of computer appearance, right? Consciousness returned to chaos, followed by a blur. Douluo continent, southwest of Tiando Empire, Fasno province, border of Notting City, Lujia village. This small village belonging to Notting City has a population of only over 200 households. Compared to other villages belonging to Notting City, the population of Lujia village is slightly smaller. However, that is because Lujia village is quite pure, and the whole village has only one surname. Lu. However, other neighboring villages have accommodated more outsiders as villagers, while Lujia village is very conservative, with only villagers surnamed Lu from beginning to end. The villagers all have a common ancestor. A soul master at the level of a soul sect. And their ancestral martial soul is the Sickle. The village is full of agricultural land, as the food and vegetables produced here have to be supplied to Notting City. Among them, Lujia village has an excellent harvest because the martial soul of the Sickle has some additional effects on removing wild grass that absorbs nutrients from crops. This also leads to the fact that even though most of the harvest in the village needs to be supplied to Notting City, Lujia village can still maintain basic needs. At this moment, outside an unattractive wooden house in the village, a little boy sat quietly on the ground, looking at his hard-working parents in the distance and sighing inexplicably. Brother! Brother! A milky voice came from behind the boy. Lu Yuan turned around and picked up the girl who was carved with powder and jade. Qingqing, come here, brother, hold her, he said. Lu Qingqing was quite clingy to his brother, lying in the boy's arms and laughing foolishly. Lu Yuan held his sister in his arms, feeling a bit worried. He has been traveling to this world for over 5 years now, and he has long understood the details of this world. Or rather, he didn't need to touch it at all. The news that had been heard everywhere for 5 years confirmed that he had traveled to a world called Douluo continent. The world in a novel. There is no magic, no martial arts, no cultivation here, only a transcendent thing in group. Martial souls and soul masters. In this world, soul masters, who account for 10% of the total population of the mainland and possess soul power, dominate the ordinary people, who make up 90% of the total population of the mainland. This is a world where the power of rulers and the lower class people is quite unequal. Traveling through this world is quite unfavorable for Lu Yuan. Compared to this backward fantasy world, Lu Yuan still misses his real world more, where there are computers, air conditioning, and mobile phones, and the lower class people can be quite happy. But after crossing through, he was powerless to go back and could only hope for a system to take him along. So, from the conscious moment on, he kept calling out the name of the system, and as a result until now, no strange sounds have popped up in his mind. And even more deadly is Lu Yuan learned that Lujia village is currently located on the border of Notting City, and next door to Lujia village is the famous Holy Soul village. He also learned that there was a blacksmith named Tang Hao in the Holy Soul village, although I don't know the famous Haotian Douluo, who killed the Pope of the Martial Soul Hall. Why dare to use his real name to arrest him in this small village without anyone from the Martial Soul Hall? But when Lu Yuan heard this name, his scalp tingled. Because this person's son was Tang San, the even more famous, I see you have a way to take death, third brother. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Martial Soul Awakening or something, of course, it will be done by Taoge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Martial Soul Awakening or something, of course, it will be done by Taoge. Fortunately, Lu Yuan and Tang San are not from the same village and do not have much intersection. In the future. There probably won't be any intersection, after all, although he is a traveler, he doesn't seem to bring any golden finger system. And according to his father Lu Qing, the ancestors of Lu Yuan, who went up 3 generations, were ordinary people who could not cultivate without soul power. In this situation, not to mention wanting to awaken a good martial soul, it is even difficult to have one level of soul power after awakening. Ah! At the thought of this, Lu Yuan let out a heavy sigh. God gave him the opportunity to travel through a different world, but did not give him a golden finger, which made him quite frustrated. Originally, this world was in an era of low productivity, and without any entertainment programs, it was enough to make modern people feel uncomfortable. Now the heavens still tell him that Lu Yuan can only be a farmer who works in the fields like his parents all his life, and he will be idle all his life, which makes it even more difficult for people to accept. Lu Qingqing didn't know why Lu Yuan sighed, but she seemed to feel unhappy. She immediately touched Lu Yuan's forehead with her small hand and chuckled, "Brother. Brother." Lu Yuan immediately pampered and rubbed his sister's hair, revealing a helpless smile. Coming into this world, I am fortunate to have both parents and a lovely younger sister. Not like Tang San Xiaowu, but a real blood thicker sister. This made Lu Yuan feel the warmth between siblings to some extent. Never mind, even if I can't become a soul master, I don't believe it anymore. With my mind, I can't make a name for myself in this world. Lu Yuan secretly made up his mind. Even if he cannot become a peerless and powerful title Douluo above 10,000 people, he must become an outstanding businessman through his own efforts. With his insights and foresight from the modern world, he may not necessarily be an outstanding businessman in a world similar to Western feudal society. Yuan. Sonny. Mom and Dad are back. Just as Lu Yuan was holding his sister for fun, the biological parents of the 2 siblings finally finished their work in the fields and walked back with a smile. Lu Yuan smiled and pulled his sister towards his parents. Time passed day by day, and one day, Lu Yuan met a familiar person at home. At the moment when Lu Yuan's father Lu Qing and mother Mana saw the old man, they quickly approached and greeted him, "Second uncle, why did you come?" The old man is Lu Qing's second uncle, named Lu Wu, also known as Lu Yuan's second grandfather. He is currently the oldest remaining elder in Lujia village, so he is also the village chief of Lujia village. Since the entire village is inhabited by the Lu family, it is not surprising to see this happening. And Lu Wu is quite kind, treating the people in the village very kindly, let alone the Lu Yuan family. Lu Wu clung to his cane and limped because his right leg was injured when he was conscripted by the Tiando Empire Border Corps on the battlefield more than a decade ago. Lu Yuan quickly brought his younger sister to Lu Wu and smiled, "Hello second grandpa." "Ah. Xiao Yuan is just obedient." Lu Wu looked at Lu Yuan and Lu Qingqing, laughing so hard that his eyes couldn't see. He took out 2 candies in his hand. "Good kid, come here, second grandpa will give you candies to eat." "Thank you, Grandpa Air." Lu Yuan politely took the candy in his hand and thanked him. Then, Lu Wucai looked at Lu Qing and Mana and said with a smile, "I came this time because tomorrow will be the awakening ceremony of this year." He looked at Lu Yuan and said, "Xiao Yuan happened to awaken at the right age this year." Lu Qing suddenly smiled bitterly and said, "Uncle, let's just forget it. Our village hasn't had a soul awakener in years. Forget it. Lu Wu suddenly blew his beard and glared, you should know that our ancestors were a noble soul sect back then. It's been so many years since then, our ancestors were more than 200 years ago. Father Lu Qing, who had no emotional intelligence at all, said in a daze. You stinky kid. Lu Wuduan couldn't help but feel angry and grabbed his cane, ready to hit him. Hey. Second uncle, don't. Lu Qin quickly begged for mercy, and Lu Wu finally let out a cold snort and put away his cane. Anyway, Xiao Yuan will go with second grandpa tomorrow. Xiao Yuan, are you okay? Lu Wu looked at Lu Yuan and said kindly. Okay, second grandpa. Lu Yuan nodded repeatedly. In fact, he didn't expect much, after all, he didn't have a system and his family background was not very good. He probably felt like he was just going for a walk tomorrow. The next day, Lu Wu came early in the morning to pick up Lu Yuan. Under the leadership of Lu Wu, Lu Yuan followed him to the martial soul hall in the center of Lujia village. Of course, this so-called martial soul hall is just a larger wooden house. But this is enough to prove how much importance the martial soul hall attaches to the commitment of voluntary awakening of the martial soul. This is enough to make Lu Yuan admire the martial soul hall. Although the martial soul hall is undoubtedly the villain of Douluo, its work style is quite straightforward. A certain protagonist is much worse off. Although Lujia village has a smaller population than other villages, there are many children in the village. There were a total of 6 children who participated in the awakening of martial souls in Lujia village this year, all of whom arrived one by one under the leadership of Lu Wu. Lu Wu pays great attention to the awakening ceremony of the martial soul in Lujia village every year. He is a person who values family honor very much. Although it has been difficult for Lujia village to produce a soul master in recent decades, he firmly believes that one day, his ancestors blessed the village with another soul master. With the soul master, the descendants of Lujia village also have some living security and will not be looked down upon. Finally, after the 5 children and Lu Wu arrived together, a young man appeared in front of Lu Yuan and others. He looked like he was in his 20s, with sword eyebrows and starry eyes, and a very handsome appearance. Wearing a white power suit with a black cloak on the back, there is a fist-sized soul character in the center of the chest. This is the standard attire for personnel directly under the martial soul hall. On the left chest, there is a badge engraved with a long sword. There are 3 long swords intertwined on the badge, and the number of the 3 represents the 3rd-class title of the Soul Master, the Great Soul Master. The long sword represents that the deacon from the martial soul hall is a war soul master. Suddenly, Lu Yuan's eyes lit up and he came. He's here. It's our familiar old friends. Su Yuntao, Taoge. Just as every little spider has the same uncle, and every Douluo story also happens to experience the same person. He is. Although his martial soul is a single dog, he claims to be a lone wolf. Every time he helps a big shot awaken his martial soul, he always says that his martial soul has been ruined. There is always a faint arrogance and impatience between his eyebrows as the deacon and awakening master of the martial soul hall. Master Su Yuntao. Lu Yuan suddenly looked at Taoge with a faint smile. Su Yuntao suddenly felt Lu Yuan's gaze and was stunned for a moment, but he didn't say much as he saw it was a child. Hello, respected war soul master, I need to trouble you this time. Second grandpa respectfully bowed to brother Tao. Sure enough, there was a faint hint of pride in brother Tao's eyebrows. He bowed slightly, not too much, as a gesture of gratitude. I don't have much time, let's start now. Lu Wu pursed his lips and said, okay. Children, this is the war soul master from Nodding City. Next, he will lead you to unlock your own martial souls. You must cooperate well with the master to awaken your martial souls. Grandpa looks forward to some of you becoming soul masters. You haven't given up yet. Taoge looked at him helplessly and then said, if other villages are okay, the martial souls in your Lu family village are mostly Sickle martial souls, and it's difficult to have children who can cultivate. Lu Wu was a bit discouraged, but he still said, I believe that one day in our Lujia village, there will be another soul master. Then, he walked out of the wooden house with a cane, leaving only Taoge and the 6 children in front of him as the patrol attendants of the martial soul hall. Helping ordinary people awaken their martial souls is a necessary task for Taoge. He has long become accustomed to it. Children, stand in a row, he said. Lu Yuan quickly became the leader and led 5 children to stand in a row. Then Su Yuntao smiled at the children and said, my name is Su Yuntao, a level 26 soul master who is your guide. Now, I will awaken your martial souls one by one. Remember, no matter what happens, don't be afraid. Lu Yuan thought to himself, good brother Tao, I already know your name. As he spoke, Su Yuntao opened his package on the table next to him and took out 2 things, 6 black round stones and a shiny blue crystal ball. Su Yuntao placed 6 black stones on the ground in a hexagonal shape and gestured for the children to come forward. Don't be afraid, close your eyes and feel it carefully. As he spoke, Su Yuntao's eyes suddenly lit up. Amidst the frightened gazes of the other children, he whispered, a lone wolf, possessed. Lu Yuan could not help roast, okay, single dog. A faint blue light was first released from the center of his eyebrows, following the position of the eyebrows all the way up and into the bun. Su Yuntao's hair was originally black, but when the blue light was injected, it instantly turned gray and quickly grew longer. The same colored hair appeared on his exposed hands, and at the same time, his body seemed to have expanded much more than before, filled with a sense of muscle. Handsome and handsome. Immediately, Lu Yuan's eyes lit up and he said inwardly. Su Yuntao immediately noticed that Lu Yuan's expression was completely different from that of the other children, glanced at him, and then withdrew it. Who is the first to come first? He suddenly asked. The children seemed a bit timid. Lu Yuan looked at them, and the other children took a step and a half back. Suddenly, they had no choice but to stand up and say, Brother Tao, I'll come first. Su Yuntao was momentarily stunned when he heard Lu Yuan calling him Tao Gu, but he didn't react for a moment. After realizing it, he looked at Lu Yuan with a strange expression and said, all right, you come first. Then, Lu Yuan approached him, and Su Yuntao quickly clapped his hands upon seeing the situation. 6 faint green lights injected into the 6 black stones on the ground. Suddenly, a layer of golden light was released from the 6 stones, forming a pale golden light shield that enveloped Lu Yuan in front of him. Lu Yuan felt as if he was enveloped in a warm and cozy world, indescribably comfortable. But suddenly, Lu Yuan felt that under the traction of the warm energy, something seemed to break in his body. All the warm breath changed in an instant, and an inexplicable feeling surged throughout his body. The violent energy began to ravage and spread, and then it seemed like a dark force rolling and surging within him. Guiding. Seemed to be missing something in the end, causing the power within Lu Yuan's body to never manifest. Finally, Lu Yuan couldn't help but take a step forward. His left eye shone with a blue light, while his right eye shone with a blood-red light. He shouted, the will of heaven is supreme authority. Su Yuntao suddenly felt a supreme force spreading throughout the room, an indescribable force, just wanting to make people submit to this force. And the next moment, a huge sickle appeared in Lu Yuan's hand. What kind of sickle is that? Blue, purple, and gold are mixed together, the blade is a translucent purple, and the golden ball on the sickle handle is rotating like an eyeball. Cruelty, recklessness, and shadows make people want to submit to them. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Death Star Sickle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Death Star Sickle. The huge sickle-shaped weapon, although the martial souls passed down from generation to generation in Lujia village are all sickles, Su Yuntao has been in charge of the southwest village of Noting City for so long, so naturally he has seen many awakening of the sickle martial souls of the villagers in Lujia village. No villager in Lujia village has a scythe martial soul like Lu Yuan's current scythe martial soul, which is huge, exquisite, and carries a murderous aura. Even though his soul power has not been tested yet, Su Yuntao firmly believes that Lu Yuan's soul power is definitely not low. If a martial soul with such a powerful appearance and a surrendering aura is a useless soul without soul power, then other unattractive martial souls are even less likely to have soul power. Lu Yuan blinked his eyes and then looked at the huge sickle in his hand with an incredulous expression on his face. Although the sickle was quite large in volume and looked very heavy overall, it could hardly feel any weight in Lu Yuan's hands. But this kind of thing is not the key. Compared to the sickle martial soul itself, this kind of thing is not worth Lu Yuan's shock. Is this Kaiyin's dark demon sickle? Lu Yuan couldn't help but think to himself. But soon he denied it in his heart. No, this is not the dark descendant magic sickle of the shadow flow sickle. But the Death Star demon sickle. Lu Yuan was very determined in his heart. The appearance of this sickle is very different from the dark American magic sickle in Kaiyin's native skin. At least the dark American magic sickle in the original painting is all ancient and does not have such a technological appearance. This sickle is the Death Star scythe in the skin of Kaiyin Odyssey. A weapon created by the Death Star spirit, the ultimate weapon that can destroy galaxies and devour arcane powers. You should know that although both Odyssey Kaiyin are a skin of the shadow flow sickle Kaiyin, the worldview of the former and the latter are completely different. The background story of Kaiyin is still imprisoned in the fantasy world of the continent of Valoran, despite possessing great beings such as ascenders, star spirits, half-gods, and gods. But compared to the worldview of the Odyssey series skins, this worldview is still much inferior. After all, the Rune world is still imprisoned in one world and one planet, while in the Odyssey worldview, it spans countless galaxies and is ruled by the Dalmatian government. The Empire's borders are vast and vast, completely like a behemoth spanning most of the universe. Although Lu Yuan had little understanding of the background story of the Odyssey in his past life, he was still aware that the Death Star scythe that last hosted in the Odyssey story was much stronger than the Dark Seed scythe. However, Lu Yuan was somewhat puzzled. It seemed that he had just awakened the Death Star demon scythe martial soul guided by Su Yuntao's soul power, but he always felt the soul power guidance of Su Yuntao is not the main reason, but the key point lies in the sentence he just involuntarily shouted out. The will of heaven is supreme authority. This sentence is a line from the independent voice pack in the Kaiyin Odyssey skin, very catchy, and also one of the lines that Lu Yuan loved in his past life. But this sentence was not something he wanted to say on his own initiative, it was more like something he couldn't help but say. Can you say? Lu Yuan suddenly thought of something. At this moment, Su Yuntao quickly approached and stood in front of him, asking, "What kind of martial soul are you?" "It's called the Death Star Magic Sickle," Lu Yuan said honestly. "Death Star Demon Sickle." Su Yuntao suddenly stuttered. Without saying anything else, the name sounded quite powerful. And Su Yuntao looked at Lu Yuan, who was about 6 years old, and felt that there should be no situation where a child like him exaggerated his martial soul name to pretend to be 13. After all, for such a big child, it's difficult for him to say even a few words, so Su Yuntao is more inclined to believe that Lu Yuan's martial soul is this name, just like top-level martial souls such as Haotian Hammer, Blue Electric Tyrannosaurus Rex, and Seven Treasures Glass Pagoda, who are born with their own names. Su Yuntao couldn't sit still anymore. "Come on, child. By the way, what's your name?" "Lu Yuan." "Okay, Xiao Yuan, come here to test your soul power. First retrieve your martial soul." Su Yuntao was about to signal to Lu Yuan how to retrieve his martial soul, but he hadn't finished speaking yet. As soon as he saw the huge sickle in Lu Yuan's hand disappear, he coughed and said, "Then come and put your hand on the blue crystal ball in my hand." Lu Yuan was quite obedient, extending the child's right hand and Su Yuntao's wolf paw in the upper and lower positions of the crystal ball, making the contrast very obvious. Suddenly, the blue crystal ball burst into a dazzling light, and the dazzling blue light spread instantly from the beginning. In the blink of an eye, the crystal ball shone like a brilliant gemstone. It's like a blue star in front of you, making it difficult to open your eyes and look directly at the soul power test crystal. Even Su Yuntao was pricked to tears by this dazzling light, and this was the first time he had seen it. Is this innate full soul power? Su Yuntao couldn't help but say, but shouldn't the manifestation of innate full soul power just be emitting blue light halo? Even though he has considerable experience in awakening martial souls among Douluo Tongren, he has seen all kinds of divine-level martial souls, holy-level martial souls, and apocalyptic martial souls. Apart from the teasing in Tongren's works, Su Yuntao is just an ordinary martial soul hall awakening ceremony attendant. Not to mention divine-level martial souls, it is estimated that one person with soul power can be seen hanging every year. So he was quite uncertain at the moment, and under this uncertainty, he would trust his common sense even more. When the martial soul awakens, the highest is the innate full soul power, which is probably manifested by the combination of innate full soul power and the strength of the martial soul. Is there a martial soul with innate soul power exceeding level 10? Su Yuntao smiled at this. When Lu Yuan heard his self-talking words, he said to himself, "Sorry, there is a Wulin in the world that you said was born with more than 10 levels of soul power. It is still in your Wulin hall." He is naturally referring to the daughter of the former and current popes of the martial soul temple. Alright, the innate soul full of soul power, the Death Star demon Sickle, is owned by Lu Yuan from Lujia village in Nodding City. This needs to be reported to the higher-ups. Su Yuntao said excitedly at this moment. Suddenly, Lu Yuan's heart tugged. Yes, you should know that what Lu Yuan awakened was a martial soul with innate full soul power, not a recognized, useless martial soul, blue-silver grass like Tang San, but a sickle-shaped weapon martial soul with obvious strong combat power. Su Yuntao naturally needs to report to the superior martial soul hall, which is also the reason why Martial Soul Hall has been dedicated to the voluntary awakening ceremony of martial souls throughout the mainland. They need to collect talented soul masters from other martial soul sects and families to enhance their own strength. It is precisely because of this that the Martial Soul Hall has become the most powerful force in the Douluo continent, surpassing sects such as the Haotian sect and the Blue Electric Bawang sect. And this is why the Haotian sect and the Blue Electric Overlord sect, even with powerful and relatively stable top-level martial souls, dare not speak up despite being stepped upon by the Martial Soul Hall. Lu Yuan immediately began to ponder deeply. The question before him was that once Su Yuntao reported it to the Martial Soul Hall, he must consider whether to join the Martial Soul Hall and become a member of it. Thank you to the book friend Shi Moyin for the 6 recommendation tickets and the book friend Why You Are Mischievous for the 4 recommendation tickets. Thank you for your support. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Taoge is a diligent worker. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Taoge is a diligent worker. To be honest, Lu Yuan is not averse to the Martial Soul Hall. After reading so many novels by Douluo Tongren in his previous life, he even felt that the Martial Soul Hall was actually one of the few guiding lights in the world of Douluo continent. The most important thing is that the Martial Soul Hall is not as domineering as people imagine, and they don't even know how to forcibly dig people. The original director of the Martial Soul Hall, Ma Zayunuo, once said that the Martial Soul Hall does not have the reason to dig people from the academy. So, Lu Yuan felt even more that the Martial Soul Hall was a very upright and free soul master organization. It not only had the obligation to help civilians awaken their martial souls, but also implemented soul master registration and subsidy measures, so that soul masters from ordinary backgrounds would not take risks to kill people and steal goods for the sake of money. Even the head of the Seven Treasures Glass sect, Ning Fengji, feels that over the decades, the entire Douluo continent has been relatively peaceful due to the Martial Soul Hall. Not only that, the Martial Soul Hall will also issue a wanted notice for soul masters who kill without reason, forcing them not to act recklessly and take life or death, which is also quite admirable. It's just that the attitude towards human soul beasts like Xiaowu and Ayan, who have been around for 10,000 years, is a bit harsh. However, Lu Yuan thinks that the behavior of the Martial Soul Hall is quite reasonable because soul beasts and humans are never the same race. Those who are not of our race will have different hearts. The relationship between soul beasts and humans, although not to the point where one side must be extinct, is definitely not much better. To maintain the transcendence of human species, it is necessary to hunt soul beasts, which belongs to the law of the jungle and cannot be changed. Moreover, the Martial Soul Hall is not without protecting soul beasts. On the contrary, it is precisely the Martial Soul Hall that has issued a ban on the slaughter of soul beasts. In the original work, to hunt soul beasts, soul masters must first go to the Martial Soul Hall for strength certification and have relevant personnel's proof before issuing a warrant to enter the soul beast forest to hunt soul beasts. Otherwise, soul masters who want to obtain soul bones will inevitably resort to indiscriminate hunting of soul beasts to obtain soul bones. If that's the case, in the world of Douluo, there is a huge disparity in strength between the two groups of humans and soul beasts have long been eliminated, leaving only some soul beasts that have been around for less than 10,000 years. As for the act of wanting to unify the Douluo continent and launch a war behind the Martial Soul Hall, it can only be said that this is a story that benefits both the present and the future. The unification war will certainly sacrifice many lives, but this is just a painful experience. Once unified, the people of Douluo continent will all be the subjects of the same country, and there will be almost no war born. Unlike the two empires on Douluo continent now facing each other, there are occasional wars of all sizes in the border area, sacrificing not only soul masters but also ordinary people like Grandpa Lu Yuan. Because even in the fantasy world of Douluo continent, where there are soul masters with combat power far exceeding that of ordinary people, there are still legions composed of ordinary people participating in the war. Moreover, compared to soul masters, ordinary people are more likely to sacrifice themselves on the battlefield. So, in the eyes of Lu Yuan, reunification is not a heinous crime for the sake of greater peace. Although war itself is hateful, if it is fought for love and peace, it is inevitable. Therefore, overall, Lu Yuan does not dislike joining the Martial Soul Hall and becoming the exclusive soul master of the Martial Soul Hall. Why doesn't he join? Joined the Martial Soul Hall and became the exclusive soul master of the Martial Soul Hall. At that time, he will enter the Martial Soul Hall Soul Master Academy for enrollment. With the Death Star magic sickle, he admits that he will not lose to anyone. At that time, he will surely become the golden generation of the Martial Soul Hall, like Hulayina and Xiaoyu, and be appreciated by the Martial Soul Hall. Backed by the powerful power and resources of the Martial Soul Hall, Lu Yuan believes that he will eventually become a god. And becoming a god will not be the ultimate achievement of Lu Yuan, because the Death Star Sickle in the Odyssey universe can give Cain the power to overthrow the Demazian government and establish his own empire. The divine kings of Douluo world, in the Odyssey universe, are probably even the lords of a planet, and compared to the Demacian government that conquered countless star seas, they are just a little larger ants. Lu Yuan felt like he had some thoughts born out of the arrival of the Death Star magic sickle. Some bold ideas. Su Yuntao had no idea what Lu Yuan was thinking on the side, but he was already very excited and had discovered such a genius with innate soul power. He would definitely be appreciated by the bishop when he reported it. So, he was now full of enthusiasm and said, "Xiaoyuan, please wait here for a while, okay? Next, you kids all come over. Due to Lu Yuan's fault, Su Yuntao is now full of interest in the originally useless and boring martial soul awakening ceremony, and his attitude has become more gentle. He greeted one of the remaining 5 children in Lujia village. "Come on, child, what's your name?" He also asked for the names of each child out of place. My name is Lu Ping," the boy said timidly. Then, his martial soul was guided out by Su Yuntao, and a sickle appeared in his palm. Just the sickle in the boy's hand, compared to the Death Star demon sickle that Lu Yuan had just awakened, should not be too infatuated with you. But Su Yuntao did not give up, but said gently, "Come, test your soul power. Maybe you have soul power to cultivate." But soon, Su Yuntao said somewhat disappointed, "It's a pity. Without soul power, you can't become a soul master. Then you go aside first." Then, he looked at the remaining 4 children, as if there was still some hope. Unfortunately, the same scene continued to unfold. After Lu Yuan awakened his martial soul, the martial souls of 5 children were awakened one after another. Their martial souls were all the same as those of the sickle sword. Not right, there was one child who was the same as Lu Yuan, and their martial souls mutated from an ordinary sickle to a rusty sickle. But their soul power is all of a kind. Continuously using soul power, Su Yuntao seems to be a bit tired. Most importantly, among these 6 children, there is only one lucky one like Lu Yuan. His martial soul not only undergoes a benign mutation, but also possesses innate soul power. That's right, I took it for granted. Su Yuntao patted his head and muttered, "What are you thinking? In the past, it would be good to meet a child with 1 or 2 levels of soul power in 10 villages. How could there be several children with soul power in one village this year? Alright, but I've gained something from this trip." He turned his head to look at Lu Yuan, who had been watching him all along, and smiled. "Child, come with me." Lu Yuan was quite honest and walked over. Su Yuntao took his hand and walked towards the door, with a smile on his face. "Village Chief Lu," he said. The door opened, and Lu Wu nervously welcomed Su Yuntao. "Mr. Su, how are you? Is it possible for the children in our village to become soul masters this year?" "Congratulations." Su Yuntao's face was full of a smile, and even his nickname changed. "Congratulations, Village Chief Lu. Your village has had a very good seedling this year. Is it?" "Xiao Yuan, this child." Lu Wu looked at Lu Yuan beside Su Yuntao and was immediately excited. "Yes. This child's martial soul has mutated. Although it is still a sickle martial soul, it has mutated into an exceptionally powerful martial soul. He called it the Death Star Demon Scythe. Moreover, this child is still born with full soul power," Su Yuntao said with a smile. "His future prospects are limitless." Suddenly, tears flickered in Lu Wu's eyes, and his body, which had always been leaning on a cane but was very stable, began to tremble. His old face was full of joy, and he kept muttering, "Ancestor bless me. Ancestor bless me. Ancestor bless me. Alright, I will report this matter to the Superior Martial Soul Hall." Su Yuntao smiled and waved his hand, handing Lu Yuan's small hand to Lu Wu. "Next, I will go to the Holy Soul Village next to you to help the children there awaken. Let's say goodbye." Lu Wu immediately approached Lu Yuan with a smile on his face and said to Su Yuntao, "Thank you. Thank you, sir." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Where does the unchanging handsome guy come from? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Where does the unchanging handsome guy come from? At this moment, Lu Wu was facing Lu Yuan, and his amiable old face was already smiling, revealing teeth that were about to fall out. "Good. Good child." As a traveler, Lu Yuan has always been more sensible than other children in the village. Originally, Lu Wu liked him, but now he is even happier when he hears that Lu Yuan has awakened his martial soul and can become a soul master. But he also didn't forget the other 5 children who came here to awaken together. He called those children out and kindly took out a few candies. Don't be discouraged, even if you can't become soul masters, you are all good children. How many years old do children know so much, especially in Lujia village where there is no soul master at all, and they don't understand the concept of not being able to become a soul master. If in a city full of soul masters, they may also feel sad because of the pressure of the environment and cannot become soul masters. But this is a rural village without a soul master, and a few children got candy and happily forgot about not being able to become a soul master. Following in the footsteps of Lu Wu, I returned home, and my parents were still working hard in the fields in front of my house, facing the sun and the land, hoping for a better harvest this year. This way, in addition to handing over enough grain to the Lord of Nodding City, there will be more grain and vegetables left, which can be sold to earn a few copper soul coins. They didn't care at all about Lu Yuan's awakening of the martial soul ceremony today, because there hasn't been a soul master in the village for more than a decade. The simple peasant mentality made them believe that their son, like everyone else, wouldn't become a soul master. Seeing Lu Wu bringing Lu Yuan back, Lu Qin just put away his scythe martial soul and said with a smile, "Thank you, uncle." Then, he looked at Lu Yuan beside Lu Wu and suddenly froze for a moment. Lu Yuan only felt that his father was inexplicable. "It's not hard." "Of course it's not hard." Lu Wu said with great joy, "I'll tell you both a big good thing." "What's good?" "Have the adults in Nodding City relax the land tax this year." Lu Qin's eyes lit up and he hugged his wife beside him with some excitement. "It's much better than that, ha ha ha." Lu Wu laughed heartily. Today, when Xiaoyuan awakened his martial soul, the adult from the martial soul hall said that this child has the talent to become a soul master. "What?" Suddenly, Mana's face turned shocked. "Your son. You can become a soul master." Lu Wu repeated at this moment. Suddenly, the two couples became even more excited, with emotions similar to those of Lu Yuan's ancient rural parents who learned about their child's high school education. The ecstatic expression on their faces could not be concealed. At this moment, Lu Yuan seemed to hear a faint cry coming from the house, and he immediately realized, it's the child from Qingqing. Suddenly, he had no intention of continuing to pay attention to the ecstatic Lu Wu and his parents, and immediately ran into the room. "Brother! Brother! Brother!" On the ground, a little girl under 4 years old was crying uncontrollably, making it hard to pity. As soon as Lu Yuan entered the room, he saw his sister Lu Qingqing crying incessantly and calling out for her brother. Suddenly, he felt a bit overwhelmed with tears and laughter. After all these years, since he became sensible, he has been taking care of his younger sister Lu Qingqing, while his parents have been working in the fields with peace of mind. So this also led to Lu Qingqing always being very clingy to him, and the two siblings have always been inseparable. Today, Lu Yuan was taken by Lu Wu to awaken his martial soul. Throughout the morning, Lu Qingqing couldn't see his brother, so he naturally cried uncontrollably at home. Lu Yuan suddenly felt a warmth in his heart, but also felt a bit helpless. He quickly came to Lu Qingqing and said, "Brother is here, brother is here." Lu Qingqing heard a familiar voice and opened her teary eyes, ready to stop crying. But the next moment, in a situation where Lu Yuan couldn't figure it out, she cried even harder, "Wow, wow, wow. Brother! Brother! Ah!" Lu Yuan looked bewildered, but still said, "Brother is here, brother is here." But the little girl would only cry and shout, "Brother! Brother!" After all, the child is only 3 years old, but according to Lu Yuan's past experience, Lu Qingqing would never cry again after seeing her brother. At this moment, Lu Yuan accidentally caught a glimpse of the nearby water tank and saw a reflection of a figure on the water surface. He was momentarily stunned, then couldn't help but walk forward and come to the surface of the water. He looked at himself in the water, somewhat incredulous. Lu Yuan, who had traveled to this world, came from a family of farmers. His father and mother were not considered handsome and beautiful, so his appearance has always been very ordinary, just a bit cute like a child. But cuteness and handsomeness are generally not the same thing. At this moment, the reflection of himself in the water by Lu Yuan was a delicate facial feature, but it could still be seen that these were Lu Yuan's facial features. However, the facial features have become more delicate, and the previously tan skin has now become incredibly fair, comparable to the whiteness of a previous white person. Is this the effect brought about by the awakening of martial souls? Lu Yuan couldn't help but think. No wonder Lu Qing was stunned when he saw him just now. It was a moment before he recognized such a handsome child as his own son. However, as a 3-year-old girl, Lu Qingqing is particularly sensitive to differences in appearance, and has developed a serious sense of alienation from Lu Yuan's only slightly more refined appearance. She does not believe that this is her most intimate and beloved brother in the past. Suddenly, while Lu Yuan was pleasantly surprised, he felt somewhat helpless. After becoming handsome, his younger sister no longer recognized him. What? Mana looked at Lu Wu with some disbelief. After bringing Lu Yuan home and telling the good news to Lu Qing and Ma Na, Lu Wu was excitedly stayed by Lu Qing to have dinner. To celebrate Lu Yuan's becoming a soul master, Lu Qing reluctantly slaughtered one of the only 2 livestock in the family for dinner. However, at this moment, Lu Wu told them a message: since Xiao Yuan has the talent to become a soul master, we must send him to study at the Soul Master Academy in Notting City. It is obvious that the mother dotes on her children. When Lu Yuan was only 6 years old and was about to leave them, Mana's eyes immediately turned red. Uncle, can we not let Xiao Yuan pass by? You're such a virtuous woman. Sending Xiao Yuan to the Soul Master Academy is a good thing, otherwise there won't be any soul masters in our village. Who will teach Xiao Yuan how to cultivate? Xiao Yuan will go to the Soul Master Academy to study and become a soul master in the future, and the good days of our Lujia village will come. Lu Wu said with resentment. Ah. Lu Qing sighed, but said firmly, Mana, Uncle Air is right. Xiao Yuan's future is limitless and cannot be limited to our small village. But Mana seemed to still have some concerns. Mom, there's nothing to worry about. At this moment, Lu Yuan spoke up, Mom, I want to become a soul master and let everyone in Lujia village live a good life. He still has a strong sense of belonging to Lujia village, after all, this is his hometown in this world. Even if everyone in the village may not be able to help him in the future, at least they are all family members. He will not, like some ungrateful people, ignore his hometown that has helped him before when he becomes stronger. Upon hearing this, Lu Wu was very excited and said, Good. Good child. Upon hearing this, Mana could only accept it. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. 3 Voice Packets 3 Life Martial Souls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 3 Voice Packets 3 Life Martial Souls. The decision for Lu Yuan to enroll in the Notting City Soul Master Junior College has been made, although his father and mother are very reluctant, and he is also worried that Lu Qingqing, this little guy, will not get used to it after he leaves. But this is the path he must take, because although Lu Yuan can cultivate soul power on his own, he cannot obtain soul rings in Notting City without joining the Soul Master Academy or the Martial Soul Hall. That's why he must go to school. At night, a pair of eyes suddenly lit up in the dark cabin, and Lu Yuan gently moved the small hands that held Lu Qingqing tightly away from him. Then, soul power spread to the soles of his feet, and his footsteps left the cabin lightly and silently. Arriving at the empty and deserted hill, he looked around, his soul power acting on his eyes to improve his night vision ability. After discovering that there was no one around, Lu Yuan nodded. He came out at night mainly to test a few things. Do whatever you say, first and foremost. The manifestation of the martial soul. Lu Yuan's soul power was activated, and then his mind moved and he said, Martial soul. Now. In theory, with such an operation, the Death Star magic sickle should appear in his hand in an instant. But an accident occurred. Lu Yuan's soul power condensed in his hand, but there was no appearance of that large and exquisite killing weapon. He remained silent for a moment, feeling a bit melancholic. It wouldn't really be like that, would it? Suddenly, he felt a bit helpless and shouted loudly, "Million heroes, all listen to my orders." The lines from Zhong'er to Jiji were filled with earth-shaking momentum, and then a huge blue, purple, and gold sickle suddenly appeared in the hands of the child named Lu Yuan. The power of rampage, darkness, and submission spread from his center. At this moment, Lu Yuan's mind seemed to be loaded with Odyssey Kaiyin's voice pack, and every line was incredibly familiar. He took a deep breath and began waving his huge sickle. The will of heaven is supreme authority. The powerful force of the sickle swung out a huge gust of wind, cutting off half of the blue-silver grass on the mountain. Lu Yuan didn't care either. For farmers, the wild grass like blue-silver grass, which cannot be completely cut or burned, is the most detestable. It absorbs nutrients from crops, leading to poor crop development. Lu Qingmena works in the fields every day, a large part of which is to cut off blue-silver grass. No one can tarnish my grandeur and glory. This time, Lu Yuan aimed at a huge stone in front of him, and the brutal power of the Death Star magic sickle directly divided the stone in half. I bow down to my infinite glory, sincerely bow down. They will sing my name for thousands of years. Those who follow me prosper, those who oppose me perish. The extremely arrogant lines came out with a fierce wind, destroying the environment around Lu Yuan. The power was so great that it was impossible for a 6-year-old child to achieve it. Lu Yuan suddenly stopped, holding a giant sickle in his hand, but he didn't breathe at all. He was just a little helpless. It seems that the golden finger I crossed is a voice pack-like ability. His face was quite complicated. As long as I keep reciting lines along with the voice pack in my mind, I can gain powerful power. And based on his previous attempt, he came up with a rule that when he recited a line, the power belonging to the Death Star sickle could last for 3 minutes. And without reciting his lines, he cannot achieve this tremendous power with his soul power, as reciting a line can last for 3 minutes. This has saved a lot of life. He doesn't want to fight like a chatterbox and keep breaking his mouth, not only without being forced, but also like a secondary illness. Alright, next is the second thing. Lu Yuan took a deep breath and then picked up the Death Star magic sickle, asking the sickle, last. He was a bit nervous and extremely afraid of a second sound popping out of his head. You should know that whether in the world of Rune Land or the world of Odyssey, whether it is the Dark Sickle or the Death Star sickle, they all host a soul. Last, and constantly want to seize the master of the sickle and transform into the demon god of destroying the world. Lu Yuan was quite afraid, and the Death Star demon sickle was harboring such a demon god, constantly wanting to take away his body. He doesn't believe that a demon god who has lived for at least thousands of years, as a young man who has only lived for less than 30 years in his past and present lives, can easily influence Last and make him his most loyal companion. If Last is really in this sickle, Lu Yuan must know if he exists. If he knows, he can still be on guard in the future. If Last were here, but he didn't know about it, he wouldn't even know how to die in the future. Last. Lu Yuan continued to ask. Last. Are you here or not? Are you there? Last. I said, are you with this broken sickle? At this moment, Lu Yuan suddenly thought of something and changed his mind. Last. The Death Star is coming to find you. In the world of the Odyssey, Last was cast into the Death Star magic sickle because he betrayed the Death Star spirit, and was imprisoned in the sickle, so he was very afraid of the Death Star. Hammer Stone is here to catch you. Hammer Stone is the most powerful incarnation of the Death Sign Star spirit. Lu Yuan felt that even if Last didn't believe what he said, when Last heard the name Hammer Stone, he would tremble, like the original voice Kaiyin said. Because this is the biggest fear in Last's heart, his body will involuntarily react. But still not yet. The huge sickle is like a dead object without independent consciousness, motionless. It seems. Lu Yuancheng suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. The Death Star demon sickle is just a dead object created by a bug in the world when I traveled through it, and there is no soul like Last. The Death Star scythe should have come from the voting post I read while traveling, he thought to himself immediately. And I voted for 3 options at that time. Isn't that? Lu Yuan guessed and then took back the Death Star demon sickle. Come on, practice to gain true knowledge. Let's give it a try. He immediately smiled and shouted, the person chosen by the Thunder Dragon is not afraid of any storm in the world. In an instant, a thunderous and stormy force surged out of Lu Yuan's body, and then white light flickered and spread throughout his body. The bluish-white dragon scales gradually spread throughout his body, and then his right hand, along with a thunderous dragon on his shoulder, hovered over his shoulder, transforming into a symbol of a divine dragon's head. This divine dragon dyed his right upper half semi-transparent bluish-white. Lu Yuan looked at his right hand, which was full of thunderous power, and his eyes were immediately filled with surprise. Next is the third martial soul. Lu Yuan regained the power of the divine dragon Venerable Li Qing. Then, he followed the third voice packet in his mind and said, I light up the path to darkness, and so I become darkness. A pair of black and red Tai Dao suddenly appeared in Lu Yuan's hands. Thank you to book friend Mr. Yu for 1 recommendation ticket and to book friend Shi Moyin for 6 recommendation tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Brainless people only think of fighting, killing, solving questions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Brainless people only think of fighting, killing, and solving problems. Lu Yuan drew out his Tai Dao, as if a blade forged by the flames of purgatory had appeared before his eyes. The blazing blade carried the aura of darkness and purgatory, and was quite dazzling. After all, the Night Messenger also is the most powerful first-generation Night Messenger in the theme world of Night Dawn. He is the true embodiment of darkness, equivalent to one of the 2 supreme gods of that world. No matter how powerful the Death Star sickle is, it fears the death sign spirit even in the world of the Odyssey. Even though Li Qing, the divine dragon venerable, holds the power of storm thunder, he is only a follower of storm dragon Ao Xing, even though he is the most powerful among the divine dragon envoys. And the Night Messenger also, on the other hand, is himself darkness, and darkness is his own existence. In that world, except for the Dawn Messenger Ruewen, who is on equal footing with him, he is the most powerful existence. So, if Lu Yuan's 3 martial souls were ranked according to their strength, they would be the divine dragon Lord Li Qing, Odyssey Kaiyin, and the Night Messenger also from childhood to adulthood. However, he suddenly thought of another thing. Damn it, I knew I had chosen Death Star Hammer Stone, Storm Dragon Ao Xing, and Night Messenger also shouldn't have changed. Ghost, if he had chosen these 3 options back then, Lu Yuan would have already flown into the sky. But he seems to have forgotten that Holy Dragon Aurelian Thor is not a T2 skin and has no independent voice, so he cannot choose Storm Dragon Ao Xing. However, I still have to thank the poster for that post. He insisted on choosing 3 options qualitatively. Lu Yuan thought of this with joy. It wasn't like that, he wouldn't even choose 3 voice packs, nor would he choose the final Night Messenger also. If you don't choose, there won't be the 3 lives martial soul, and there won't be the strongest and most abnormal martial soul in the end. The soul corresponding to the Odyssey Kaiyin voice pack is called the Death Star Demon Sickle, so let's give the other 2 names to the soul as well. Lu Yuan thought again, otherwise, in the future, they will be called the Dragon Lord's Soul and the Night Messenger's Soul Monster. The Divine Dragon Lord Li Qing is the power of the Thunder Divine Dragon, which looks a bit like the blue electric Tyrannosaurus Rex. He scratched his head at the thought of this and said, I won't be considered their person by the people of the blue electric Tyrannosaurus Rex when I use this martial soul in the future, will they? But it shouldn't be, after all, the divine dragon lord is not blue, and this martial soul not only has the power of thunder, but also the power of storm. Why not just storm thunder dragon? Divine dragon is too arrogant. Lu Yuan has always been a low-key person, so he decided. In fact, he also thought of a name. Blue-eyed white dragon, but as soon as the name came out, he just crossed it. The appearance of the night messenger Yasuo is reflected in the Tai Dao, which includes purgatory, dark, chaos. Then the dark hell chaos Dao. It's not too mediocre. Remove chaos and the Dao, then the dark hell. If it's about the blade of the dark hell, Lu Yuan immediately set the names of the three martial souls with joy. Death Star Magic Sickle, Storm Thunder Dragon, and Dark Prison Blade. He was quite satisfied with his naming ability. Next, we will focus on practicing Death Star Magic Sickle, and Storm Thunder Dragon can also be used. It's also good to use the previous soul ring to deceive and deceive. The blade of the dark prison needs to be careful, but maybe I can open multiple vests. Disguise my appearance and disguise myself as 3 vests. In the future, the Death Star Demon Scythe will be the essence, and the Storm Thunder Dragon will become a righteous and chivalrous person. The blade of the dark prison will do dirty work. Under Lu Yuan's plan, he laughed happily. The thought of becoming a powerful soul master and living a good life in the future made him very happy. After dreaming for a while, he regained his composure and quietly returned home to take a deep sleep. After about 2 or 3 days, it was time for Lu Yuan to enroll in the Junior Soul Master Academy in Notting City. In the past few days, while his family was secretly asleep at night, Lu Yuan constantly explored and experienced the power and ability of his 3 martial souls. He actually discovered quite a few things, the most important of which was the ability of the Death Star Magic Sickle, which shocked him greatly. At this moment, under the guidance of his mother Mana Qian and careful packing of his luggage, his sister Lu Qingqing crying uncontrollably and unwilling to let Lu Yuan leave, and his father Lu Qing's silent and complex eyes, Lu Wu and Lu Yuan struggled to leave Lujia village and entered Notting City. The Notting Junior Soul Master Academy is located in the west of Notting City, and it seems that Lu Wu is very familiar with this Soul Master Academy. He brought Lu Yuan directly to this place. From afar, they had already seen a tall arch, which was 20 meters wide and 10 meters high, all repaired from hard rocks. Below were 2 iron gates, dark and made of high-quality iron. Through the iron fence, one can see the winding paths inside, with a main road leading straight to the interior, surrounded by tall trees on both sides. In the center of the arch, there are 4 large characters, Notting College. Before Lu Wu and Lu Yuan could approach, they saw that there seemed to be a dispute among the 3 people at the door. One of the elderly and one of the younger ones had quite shabby clothes, even the clothes of farmers like Lu Yuan and Lu Wu were much better than theirs. In front of the other was a young man who looked like a gatekeeper. Lu Yuan suddenly realized that he was on his way, just in time for the first major event to occur in Douluo continent. That old and young one goes without saying, it must be old Jack who helped the protagonist a lot earlier but only received a rotten plaque in the end, as well as Tang San, who came from the other world, and I see you have a way to take death, who is Ice and Jade Tang San Shao. As the village chief of Lujia village and also known the village chief of Xinghun village, Old Jack, Lu Wu quickly led Lu Yuan forward and said, "Hey Old Jack, what's wrong with you?" At this moment, Lu Yuan suddenly noticed that there seemed to be a cold light flashing on Tang San's wrist, like a sleeve arrow, which was already aimed at the throat of the guard and was about to be killed in one blow. But soon after realizing that Lu Wu and Lu Yuan were coming, Tang San flipped his wrist and the sleeve arrow disappeared from his sleeve. Good guy. Lu Yuan sighed inwardly, I can only say that he truly deserves to be Tang San Shao. It's just that there was a slight dispute and he wanted to take someone's life. This is something that a modern person like Lu Yuan cannot imagine. Old Jack looked at Lu Wu and said with a bitter face, "Today I came to enroll a child from our village in the Soul Master Academy. But this gentleman said, we are a fake proof of the Martial Soul Hall and do not allow junior students to enroll." Then, old Jack's dazed eyes finally saw Lu Yuan beside Lu Wu, and he was surprised to ask, "Mr. Lu, are you also?" "Yeah. Our village has also produced a soul master this year, who is still born with full soul power," Lu Wu immediately said with a sense of face. However, the gatekeeper seemed to be very indifferent to the rural people and said, "Cut, another impostor. I said some people in your small villages also have soul power. The college hasn't had any working students for many years, so you imposters should get out of here quickly." Lu Yuan suddenly saw Tang San's hands overflowing with cold light, and thought to himself, "You're really making a big death. Hurry up and shut up." However, he felt that Tang San was also making a big deal out of nothing, and Lu Yuan believes that the current situation does not require manual intervention to solve. The next moment, he faced the guard and shouted, "Do you know who I am?" This line is also Odyssey Kaiyin's line, and it is relatively low key, so Lu Yuan used it as one of his daily lines for summoning martial souls. At least it won't be very abrupt at this time. The security guard was quite impatient, "Who the hell are you?" But the next moment, he couldn't say anything. Because in front of him, a huge and violent sickle suddenly appeared in Lu Yuan's hand, emitting a raging and irritable force. "Now, believe me, are you a soul master?" Lu Yuan said to him, with the huge Death Star demon sickle in his hand displaying unparalleled power. "This cannot be the power that a martial soul without soul power can possess. Believe it. Believe it." The gatekeeper trembled and said, he was just an ordinary person, trembling in front of the powerful power of the soul warrior. Lu Yuan immediately shrugged his shoulders. "Look, it's something that can be proven by just releasing the soul power and pressure of Jianghu's soul. If you insist on tampering with someone and taking their life, isn't this causing trouble for yourself? I always want to fight and kill to solve problems. It's strange how much brain that person can have." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Gratitude is a virtue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 9 Lu Yuan. But I refuse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Lu Yuan. But I refuse at this moment. Thank you, teacher. Tang San took the initiative to say to Yu Xiaojiang at this moment. "Teacher. I'm not a teacher from the college." Yu Xiaojiang looked down at Tang San and said with a slightly calm expression. "Not a teacher. Didn't you just say, representing the college? Yu Xiaojiang shook his head. Despite his lack of patience, he was particularly tolerant today and once again squeezed out a hint of that ugly smile. "Who said that only the teachers of the college can represent the college?" Tang San suddenly said, "I understand. Then you must be the president or leader of the college." Yu Xiaojiang chuckled and said, "You, a 6-year-old child, are very smart. However, you still guessed wrong." Tang San said in confusion, "So who are you?" Yu Xiaojiang said, "I'm just a resident here, eating and drinking. Just like everyone else, call me master. Everyone calls me that." He rolled his eyes, indicating that Lu Yuan also called him that. Lu Yuan thought to himself on the side, "You live in the college and say you represent Notting College, but then you say you're not a teacher at Notting College. It's really. Just open your mouth and say whatever you want, right? And your title as a master can be obtained by using familiar theories of the soul master realm, right?" However, at this moment, Yu Xiaojiang suddenly stopped and looked at Lu Yuan with bright eyes, saying, "Xiao Yuan. Are you born with full soul power?" Lu Yuan thought to himself that he would still be exposed for lying now, so he nodded directly and said, "Yes, Master Su Yuntao said I am born with full soul power." When Yu Xiaojiang heard Lu Yuan calling another person who seemed to be helping Lu Yuan awaken his martial soul master, he felt a little dissatisfied in his heart, but he didn't say anything. "Can you show me the martial soul you just revealed?" His eyes flickered with enthusiasm at this moment. Obviously, he just saw the Death Star demon Sickle when Lu Yuan showed his martial soul to the guard, so that's why he was interested in Lu Yuan and asked him not to leave just now. Lu Yuan let out a sigh in his heart and immediately exclaimed loudly, "Millions of heroes. Follow my orders." As his incredibly imposing words fell, Yu Xiaojiang couldn't help but feel a sense of submission. Then, the raging soul power of Lu Yuan condensed into a huge entity with shadows and a violent aura. In an instant, the submissive power spread around Lu Yuan's young body. The three tones of blue, purple, and gold form a huge and exquisite sickle, full of a violent and artistic sense, perfectly displayed on this unparalleled weapon. At this moment, Yu Xiaojiang was completely suppressed by the Death Star demon Sickle. "What is the name of this martial soul?" "Death Star demon Sickle," said Lu Yuan. "Death Star. Magic Scythe." Yu Xiaojiang took a deep breath. "I've never heard of a martial soul name, I've never seen a top-level scythe martial soul before. It's not wrong. This must be a mutated martial soul." His eyes were exceptionally bright at this moment, and his excited expression could hardly be concealed. But at this moment, Yu Xiaojiang restrained his excitement and looked at Tang San. "The certificate of the Martial Soul Hall states that your name is Tang San, right? Then I'll call you Xiao San." Speaking of this, Yu Xiaojiang paused, but his eyes flickered with a scorching light. "Would you like me to be your teacher? Do you want to teach me how to cultivate martial souls?" Tang San asked at this moment. Yu Xiaojiang stopped and stood still in front of Tang San. "Would you be willing to do that?" Tang San naturally stopped and looked up at the master in front of him. He didn't speak up, neither agreeing nor refusing. Yu Xiaojiang looked into Tang San's stunned eyes, and the stiff smile reappeared. "Okay, you are indeed a smart child," he said. "Not speaking has two meanings. One is not to rush to refuse to avoid offending the master. The second is to ask the master through actions, why did Tang San worship you as his teacher?" Yu Xiaojiang raised his hand and rubbed Tang San's head. "With exceptional talent and such intelligence, it seems that I will also persist once. After all, you are also the third twin martial soul in the past century." Upon hearing the master's words, Tang San was greatly surprised. His gaze at Yu Xiaojiang suddenly changed, and his left wrist had quietly been raised, with a look of doubt in his eyes. Yu Xiaojiang, the old god, looked at him with a smile and said, "Are you very fast? Why would I know you are a twin martial soul?" As he spoke, he shook the certificate given to him by old Jack in his hand. "It's because of this certificate. Perhaps others can't see the flaws in it, but if I can't see them either, then I don't deserve the words master." Lu Yuan on the side immediately sneered. It was completely nonsensical. "I once investigated 647 people whose martial souls were blue silver grass. Among them, there were 16 people who possessed soul power, with a probability of less than 3%. Even among these 16 people who possessed soul power, none of them had soul power that could exceed level 1, while you were the 10th level of innate full soul power. According to one of the 10 core competencies of martial souls that I researched, the size of innate soul power is directly proportional to the quality of martial souls. Blue silver grass obviously cannot meet this requirement, so I can be certain that you should have another martial soul, and it is a very powerful martial soul." Tang San's eyes gradually calmed down and he argued, "There are exceptions to everything, why can't I just be an exception?" Lu Yuan immediately shrugged, feeling that Tang San was being intimidated. Yu Xiaojiang nodded seriously and said, "Yes, there are exceptions to everything, but your martial soul is blue silver grass, so you are obviously not that exception." Although the Heavenly Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire have only appeared in the past 100 years, there have been only 2 twin martial souls, but 19 with innate full soul power. I have carefully studied each of their martial souls, and none of them are powerful beings. The youngest one has now reached the level of a great soul master. Except for the 14 who are powerful martial souls inherited from their family lineage, there are 5 exceptions. Their background is not noble, but they also possess innate soul power. And this unexpected occurrence is the existence of mutated martial souls. Based on my years of research on mutated martial souls, there is no mutation between any martial soul and blue-silver grass martial soul. And your blue-silver grass martial soul is an ordinary blue-silver grass, so I can completely confirm that my judgment is correct. Mutant martial soul, what is that? Tang San asked. Suddenly, Yu Xiaojiang looked at Lu Yuan again, at the Death Star demon sickle in Lu Yuan's hand, with a confident smile on his face. The one in Xiao Yuan's hand is the mutated martial soul. Still a top-level mutated martial soul. Then, he began to show off his well-known knowledge of martial souls, making Tang San feel intimidated. Tang San nodded and suddenly took a step back, distancing himself from the master. Then, he knelt down on both knees and respectfully kowtowed 3 heads to the master. Yu Xiaojiang was stunned and said, "What are you doing?" "Teacher," Tang San respectfully shouted, "please accept me as your disciple." Suddenly, Yu Xiaojiang smiled with satisfaction and bent down to pull Tang San up. "Silly kid, why do you have to kowtow when you're a disciple? Don't you know this is only a ritual for worshipping the emperor and parents? Just bow." Then, he looked at Lu Yuan, who was indifferent to him, with a bright eye. "Would you be willing to worship me as your teacher like Xiao San?" Lu Yuan blinked his eyes and said, "I'm sorry, master. I still want to learn from everyone in the college." Yu Xiaojiang's smiling face froze instantly. He couldn't believe it. He had already shown off so much knowledge just now, and Tang San, who looked more mature, was impressed. However, Lu Yuan, who looked quite naive, didn't intend to learn from him. Why, he couldn't help but ask, "Don't you believe my theory?" "But I have already learned this knowledge from Master Su Yuntao." Lu Yuan decisively pulled Brother Tao out to take the blame. Upon hearing the name Su Yuntao, Tang San couldn't help but pause for a moment before saying, "But why hasn't Master Su Yuntao told me?" "That's because my martial soul is a mutated martial soul, so Master Su Yuntao told me this knowledge." Lu Yuan showed a look of considerable trust in Su Yuntao, and second grandpa told me to follow the teachers in the college to study hard. If I become a teacher under the master, wouldn't it be possible for me to learn with other teachers? It's not like that. Yu Xiaojiang quickly wanted to explain, but when he saw Tang San, he immediately thought to himself, "Forget it, after all, I already have a disciple of a twin martial soul, this top-level mutated martial soul student. It's not too late to plan again in the future. All right." His face suddenly softened. After all, although he had a high self-esteem, he was also trying to save face, so he gave up. "But you can't tell me about the twin martial souls of the third child. Promise me, okay?" Yu Xiaojiang said again. Lu Yuan suddenly felt a bit helpless. He really didn't want to hear about Yu Xiaojiang exposing Tang San's twin martial souls in person, but he didn't expect that Yu Xiaojiang had just said it directly in front of him. "What should we do then? Now we can only agree to Yu Xiaojiang and reduce our contact with these masters and disciples." Of course, Lu Yuan glanced at Tang San. He didn't cause trouble but was never afraid of it. If Tang San felt that he had a way to die, then he would definitely use the blade of the dark prison to strike at this pure Tang San Shao. Please support, comment, and vote as much as possible. This is crucial for whether this book can be signed and whether Wood can write it down. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Jianghu is not about fighting and killing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator.